Hi and welcome to LEGO BUILDZ. Over the next few weeks I'll be showing you my display that I built for the Christchurch Brick Show for 2019. It didn't take me very long to figure out what I wanted to do. For a long time now I've wanted to recreate some scenes from the James Bond films. And once I fleshed out the idea a bit more, it became obvious that what I needed to do was try and recreate one scene from each of the actors' eras. When it came to deciding what scenes to do, some were more obvious than others. But I will give you my thoughts on that when I talk about each of the scenes that I built. Today we'll be looking at a very iconic scene from the 1973 Bond film, Live and Let Die, starring Roger Moore. And that is where Bond escapes the crocodile-infested waters of Kananga'S Crocodile Farm. Now when I was thinking what I would do for the Roger Moore era, there's so many iconic scenes to choose from. And this immediately jumped up at me. One, because I had the Lego crocodiles, and two, I just thought it would be a fun scene to do. The first challenge I had was I didn't have enough crocodiles for the scene because Bond runs across 4 crocodiles' backs, and I was fortunate enough before I started building this to acquire a 4th crocodile, which was fantastic. And what I really like about the crocodiles is that I've got variants of them. I've got the the first version of the crocodiles that Lego made, and then I've got one of the newer ones, and they could well be alligators. They have slightly different shape, and their eyes are different, but they're really, really cool. And I love the fact that both of them you can move their jaws up and down. Now originally the build was meant to be static, but just like the Goldfinger scene, I built it and I looked into it and I thought, you know, I could probably make this move. This one's a lot more complicated than the Goldfinger mechanism, which I'll talk you through very soon, but it was quite a treat at the show to see it moving, and it just drew the people into my Bond scenes really. The crocodiles and the Aston Martin and the Goldfinger laser scene were the biggest draw cards, and people just loved the fact that the crocodiles were moving, and I was really wrapped with how it turned out. Just wanted to point out a few little details we've got in the scene. I've obviously got the little island that Teehee and his goons leave Bond stranded on, and then we've got all the swamp shrubbery in the background, which I had to modify later on for the mechanisms for the crocodiles to make them move. And then on the far side we've got the fence, and we've got the little jetty that they take Bond out on that sort of winds in and out. My version doesn't wind in and out because the main feature was the crocodiles, but I built it into the scene. Then we've got Teehee. He hasn't got the classic claw hand because I don't think you can actually get anything like that. So the best I could do was a hook hand, which is obviously from a classic pirate set. Then we've got some more of Kananga'S goons, which sort of follow around with Teehee. I tried to give them a 70s vibe because of course Live and Let Die is a 1970s film, and they've got 70s style hair. We've got an afro, and we've got some sort of other long hair, which was kind of a style of the 70s. I think one of them's got a leather jacket as well. So the initial build took me I think it was about a night to do, because it is pretty basic. You know, it's just a few crocodiles on some water and a little island and the trees and the shack and more trees. And so I knew that I had a couple of spare motors, and as I mentioned in my Goldfinger scene video, I had said that I'd ended up motorizing that. Well, I had a spare motor left over, and I thought, well, it would be pretty cool if I could try and make the crocodiles move. So I spent a couple of nights working on a prototype, which effectively is a series of pulleys and gears driving a suspension rod, which then drives a very, very long rod, which is then coupled to 4 different Technic blocks, which is then coupled to the 4 crocodiles. And of course, because of the way that the main driving rod is pinned, the main driving rod at one end travels a much larger distance than the other end. And because I used an even length of the rods that are connected to the crocodiles, they move at slightly different positions. And I wanted to try and give it less of a robotic feel. Obviously, when you are running off a motor and a gear system, there's only so far you can take it that it doesn't look motorized or robotic, but having them move certainly brings it to life. So once I got the first mechanism working and it was running reasonably well, I realized that the crocodiles were running very, very fast back and forward, and it was very similar to that of the Goldfinger laser scene, where I had to gear it down incredibly slow, because even though I was running the small micro motor, it was just going really, really fast for the laser. And I had a very similar issue here with these, moving the crocodiles. Because of the way that the motor was driving the mechanism, it exaggerated the speed of the crocodiles something incredible. Just something that it just didn't look realistic. The crocodiles were moving super fast, back and forth, more like a train driving pin than anything. So I took a similar approach. I geared it down incredibly slow. So I had a very, very small wheel driving a massive wheel, which then drove a number of different gears and cogs. And then the final gear drives the suspension rod, which is then coupled to the main arm. And once I geared that motor down, it made a huge difference, and the crocodiles moved at a decent pace. And it gave that display something just a little bit extra. Absolutely love how it turned out. But the next issue I had was the crocodiles were veering off course, because there was no real track to hold them, so they kept on crashing into each other. And if this display was running all day, I needed to make sure that it was going to be reliable and run steadily and not keep on crashing, because then it's a pretty rubbish display. So I managed to build these little tracks. I used single flat tiles as the bottom of the track where the driving pins of each crocodile sat, and then I built little channels out of blue bricks to try and simulate that they were jumping out of the water. And then those tracks sort of acted like a little rail, and that kept guiding the crocodiles in the correct manner. And they ran consistently for 2 whole days at the brick show, so it worked pretty well. So obviously once I got the mechanism built and running properly, I had to modify the background, because I had kind of like just a big blue block wall to be like the sky. So then I had to build it up again and build little gaps for the rods to poke through, as you can see here. And once I'd changed that, I then added the shrubbery back in, and that kind of masked the holes a little bit. And then we had the final display in working order, and it looked tip-top. This was the most complicated of my displays because the mechanism was just so crazy to build, but it was a lot of fun to engineer, and I'm really, really happy with how it looks. I love the little Roger Moore that I had running across the back, so he tried to give him a sort of Roger Moore style haircut. The old shed to the side of the build, I tried to build with a whole heap of different colours just to give it that sort of aged look and run down, because that was pretty much what it was on the farm. I think it sort of helps add to the vibe of the entire build. Interestingly enough, the initial build was just 2 base plates wide, but then once I built the mechanism into the back, I had to space it back 1 more, and it made the display a lot larger than I was originally intending. But it was worth it to get the mechanism working right, and everything ended up working out right in the end. So that'll do it for this week. Thank you so much for watching, and James Bond will return in yet another Roger Moore Bond film. Yep, that's right, next week I'll be looking at a scene from the 1977 James Bond film, The Spy Who Loved Me. See you next week. Thank you for watching LEGO Builds. We really appreciate all of your support. If you have enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on the next video. You can now support LEGO Builds on Patreon. If this is something that you would like to do, please click the link in the description below to follow to our Patreon page. LEGO Builds is now also on Instagram and Twitter. Follow us to take a look behind the scenes of LEGO Builds and what we're currently working on.